there, my name's Linda Driver, and I'm a Master Food Preserver with the University of California Cooperative Extension. Today, I am going to try to make a video of making low-sugar strawberry jam. One of the reasons I'm making low-sugar strawberry jam is last year when we had a workshop, we made 5 different kinds of strawberry jam. Regular strawberry jam, regular freezer strawberry jam, low-sugar strawberry jam, low sugar freezer strawberry jam, and no sugar strawberry jam, and did a taste test. And the best strawberry jam was the low sugar strawberry jam. So that's what we're doing today. We have a lot of equipment that we use, but you can use most of your home stuff to do what you need to do to make a batch of jam or jelly. One thing we need is a good pot. Helps if it has a nice thick bottom and distributes the heat well. And it needs to be big enough that you can put all of the ingredients here and bring them to a boil and not have it boil over. Normally, I would use a pot like this one. But today, I'm going to use this other one because I want to be able to show the rolling boil well on the video. This one I'll have to pay more attention. When you get to that point, you need a timer. You can time by counting, or you can have a 1-minute timer that you turn upside down and stop when it gets to the bottom. Okay, when we go to process our jam at the end, I think most of you probably have heard of a water bath canner. This is a water bath canner. This is standard kind. Usually they are either aluminum like this one, or they are enamelware. They usually come with a rack that you can set the jars on, and then you can immerse them in the water. You can make any pot you own that's big enough into a water bath canner. You can make something like this, and then you can put it on the bottom of the pot and set the jars on top of it. What's necessary is to have something that raises your jar off the bottom of the pot so that the water can circulate all the way around the jar and above the jar. I used to use very frequently my spaghetti pot because it came with a built-in strainer. So that worked really good. But you can put one of these together and use your soup pot. Other tools that we're going to be using today, I'm going to be working on the strawberries. And you need various ways to smash the strawberries. If you are really strong, you can start off with this one. But I have found this really eases the process a lot. So I smash them with this first and then go to this. I'm going to show you a couple of really neat ways to get rid of the green leaves on the top of the strawberry when we get there. Over here we have our pre-measured sugar. And one of the things they tell you to do is to always get all of your ingredients out and have them and all your equipment out so that you have it ready to go when you start. That way you don't get to a place and go, oh my goodness, I don't have what I need. So we have our sugar, we have our pectin that has, the recipe calls for some sugar to be mixed in with the pectin. We have a little pat of butter, which is going to go into our recipe. We have a jar lifter that is used to lift jars out of hot pans. And we have a handy dandy measuring tool to measure headspace and to get rid of air bubbles in your jar. Let's see, we have our strawberries, and I'm going to finish making those get ready. Let's see, what else do we have that we need? I think that's it for right now. So, I'm going to finish preparing these strawberries. Now, I'll tell you something I learned a long time ago. It is really, really important to use fresh strawberries. About 40 years ago, a friend and neighbor who lived across the street and I used to go out to pick your own strawberry places. And one time we both picked our strawberries in rows that were next to each other. And when we got home, I made my strawberry jam right after I got home. She waited till the next day. You could tell the difference. Now, this method here is like way cool. And if you happen to be making strawberry jam with kids, this is fun. Adults have fun with it too. All you do is you take a straw, you position it over the middle of the bottom and push through, and the green part comes right off. You can do it with, this is one of the a permanent straw that I have for iced coffee drinks. You can also do it with a regular plastic straw. Just position your straw, push. It comes out in one nice, neat little package, and you move right along. There's always the traditional paring knife, but you usually get a little more than you want. It's good to have a paring knife around in case you find a bad spot. Don't want to can the bad spot. And I found this at an estate sale a long time ago, and it is a cool little pinch the top off the strawberry. See? Really handy little kitchen tool. Now the reason why I'm saving these, the green tops, is I have a compost heap. These things are great for the compost heap. You know what I forgot to do? Show washing my hands. I did wash my hands. Master food preservers are big about washing your hands. And I think everybody in the world by now knows that you need to wash your hands for 20 seconds, which is 2 times through Happy Birthday or the alphabet song. And that will get you to a place where you can consider yourself ready to do the next thing. The cleaning my sink and my countertops, I use a combination of 1 part bleach and 10 parts water. And that will sanitize your sink and your countertops so that you don't have to worry about bad things growing. My countertops are quartz, which one of the attributes of quartz is it's supposed to have antimicrobial qualities, which I think is a really good thing. So, we are getting close to the end of the strawberries. The variety of strawberries that I'm using today are called Chandlers, and one of the things that I like about them is they are red all the way through, and they taste really good. And the strawberry stand that I get them from picks them every day. And there was a long line of people this morning, standing 6 feet apart with face masks on. Okay, one last strawberry. I have found that going at the strawberries with my pastry blender does a good job of cutting them up, and then I finish them off with the potato masher. It's really important to kind of get a consistent mash with your strawberries. If you don't, you'll have more fruit float because bigger pieces will float to the top, and you won't have as consistent a strawberry jam. And I find for me, it's easier if I do it in little bits. This recipe calls for 6 cups of smashed strawberries, which means it takes 12 cups of non-smashed strawberries. Okay, let's see. We have 6 cups. Oh, yes, we do. Yeah, we need a couple more. Take our strawberries over here to our pan. One of the benefits of making fresh jam is you get to smell the strawberries as they cook, and they smell really good. Okay, so the recipe calls for a package of the Pectin and to be mixed with 1/4 cup of the measured amount of sugar. And you put that in when you start. And then to keep foaming down as you're making your jam, and foam forms on the top of your jams and jellies, you can put a half a teaspoon of butter or margarine into your pan. It won't change the flavor of the jam or jelly, but it does keep the foaming to a minimum. So we turn on the heat and start to stir. There's lots of stirring involved. We're going to have to pay attention because you can see how much the pot fills up with just the strawberries. And to that, we're going to add the rest of the 4 cups of sugar that go in it. A normal batch would have more sugar than fruit. This is a low sugar jam, so it has less sugar than fruit. And one of the things that master food preservers tell everybody over and over and over again, so much so that I think we say it in our sleep, is follow the recipe. Whatever the recipe tells you to do, follow the recipe. Oh, and by the way, it's a really good idea to read the recipe through before you start. That way you know what kind of things you need to have out and ready to use, and you know what the process is. This is adding the sugar with the pectin is not something you do with every recipe, and so that is something that you wouldn't, if you thought you knew how to do it, you would miss that step. So it's always good to read the recipe and the instructions all the way through. Oh, while I'm stirring here, I'll go back. I'm sort of disjointed. I talked about a water bath canner. Today, I'm going to use my steam canner. The steam canner works almost the way a water bath does, but obviously it doesn't use a water bath. The water is below, it turns into steam. I sterilized these jars earlier today, so they are ready to use. And so when I fill them with jam, I will put them back in here, and then I will turn the fire on, and it will, when it comes up to the right temperature, which is shown by the gauge on the top, I will process it for the amount of time that the recipe says, which is 10 minutes. I wasn't sure about the steam canner, but once I bought one and started using it, I decided I liked it a lot better because, one, you only have to use this much water. You fill up to where the shelf is that the jars sit on, and so it uses less water. You can use it for anything up to, its limit is 45 minutes on processing time, because after that you're going to run out of water, and therefore you'll run out of steam, and then you'll run out of heat, and so your product won't be safe. So you can use it for anything like jams and jellies, because they usually process for a very short time. Okay, our pot is beginning to boil. As you can see, around the edges is starting, and if I stopped stirring, you'd start to see boiling. We're almost there, but not quite, because what we're looking for is a full rolling boil. And the definition of a full rolling boil is one that you cannot stir down. That's what you want. A full rolling boil. You can see how the edges, it's not going down because I'm stirring. So I'm adding the sugar, and this is where the taller pot would be a good idea, because I wouldn't have to be quite so careful about stirring. But I wanted you to be able to see what you're looking for. So now we're stirring in the sugar, and we keep on stirring. I'm going to do this until it starts to boil again, and then we will count time. You can see the foam I was talking about on top of the strawberry and sugar mixture. And when we are finished, what I do is I usually scrape off, I get the foam over to the edge and get it off with a spoon and put it in a bowl, and that's the first thing that gets eaten. There's nothing wrong with the way it tastes or the nutritional value or anything else. It's just not as pretty. So it took about 4 or 5 minutes for it to come to a boil the first time. And now we're on a couple of minutes in. I'm going to pay attention how long it takes to get back to that full rolling boil. Okay, we're getting there. It's starting to be boiling on the edges. And that's not boiling down. I want it to be a little more involved before I start counting time. But it's important not to go too long, because if you go too long, you can ruin the set. Okay, I'm calling it a full rolling boil. I turned over the timer. So now I really need to pay attention and stand ready. If it gets too close to the top, I'll be turning down the fire. If you don't have a timer, you can do 1001, 1002, 1003, so on until you get to 60, and that works too. Okay, we reached our minute. So now I'm going to stir it down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to let it settle, and I'm going to get a big spoon so that I can start scooping up that foam. Like I said, you can leave the foam on and put it in the jar. It doesn't hurt anything. It just doesn't look as pretty. And if you're going to go to all this work, you might as well have pretty. And this will go on my toast tomorrow morning. All right, that's pretty good. Move my pan over to where I usually fill my jars. I have a routine for this. It smells so good. Okay. Now, okay. Oh my goodness. This is a good thing to pay attention to. This jar lost its bottom. Obviously, we're not using that jar. I was going to tell you, I always prepare an extra jar just in case. That was a good thing to do, because obviously I'm going to need it. Because the recipe says it's going to make 8 cups, and I prepared 9 jars, so I should be okay. This is called a pot film. It's really helpful because you don't have to carry water across the floor. A lot of the books and a lot of people who do it, when we teach classes, we tell people to use a ladle and a funnel. And that works. That works just fine. But I'm not real crazy about it myself. So I will do one this way, and then I'll show you what I normally do. Now, I need to add a little bit more. Now, once you've filled a jar, there's a couple of things. If you get experienced, you pretty much know where a 1/4 inch is. But if you're trying to measure it because you're not at that place yet, you can put this handy dandy little measuring device on there, and you can see, can you see from this angle that it's not touching the jelly? So that means that that jar needs a little bit more. So you can get pretty good at judging your headspace, that's what it's called. And different products require different headspace. And for jam and jelly, it's a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to put this over here. Now, I have found that I do just fine doing it this way. If you're careful, you don't end up with a big mess. And for me, it's faster. Okay, when we get down to the end, there is enough there probably for a 4-ounce jar if I went and got one. But what you can also do with it is you can fill a jar that you're not going to process, that you're going to keep in the refrigerator and eat right away. And that works just fine too. You only need to process the stuff that you want to be able to store. If you're going to eat it tomorrow, it doesn't need to be processed. So this will get eaten right away. We'll set it over here, and it will probably set up by the time we finish processing the jars. Now, one of the things they tell you to do, I don't think I'm going to have a problem here with any of these. They tell you to get rid of air bubbles, but as you can see, this stuff is really pretty liquid and the fruit is pretty well distributed. So I'm not thinking that I really have air bubbles to worry about here. The other thing is, at this point in time, is you go around and did you measure right? Or do we need more? And you know what? If it's coming up short, like that one is, that is where this jar that you're going to eat tomorrow comes in really handy. So you could do that, and you can go like that. Bring it right up to where it needs to be. Maybe there won't be any for tomorrow other than the foam. Okay, now we want to make sure we have a good seal on our jars, and one of the ways we do that is by ensuring that the top of the jar is clean all the way around. So that's what our wet paper towel is good for. Because if you have jam that's up there on the top, it will mess with your seal, and that is not a good thing ever. So our next thing is the rings and the lids, the two-part rings and lids. You used to have to boil the lids. The new lids do not need that. They have a seal around the edge that will do a good job just through the processing. So we put the lids on, we put the rings on, and the rings, we turn them finger tight. And that is old lady grandma finger tight, not big strong grandson finger tight. And take our jars over and set them in the steam canner. Make sure that the water is in the steam canner is just up to the shelf, and it is. And then we put the lid on. Now, in the boiling water bath, you start counting time for the processing when all the water with the jars in it comes to a boil. With a steam canner, we wait until the indicator on the top gets over into the green zone, and then we can start counting our time. So we have to wait until it comes up to temperature before we can start counting our 10 minutes. Then we will count our 10 minutes to finish processing our jam. Okay, so our steam canner has gotten into the green zone, which means that we can start counting time now. So I'm going to set my timer on 10 minutes, and we're going to let it go until we hear the ding, and then we will turn off the fire. What we will do after that is leave it alone for 5 minutes. And that is to let everything in the jar settle and not to do it, because at this point in time we want to make sure we do not disturb the jars in the seals. We want them to make a good contact and a good seal. After 5 minutes of waiting, then I will show you how to remove the jars from the canner, and they will sit on the countertop and not be molested for 24 hours. That way we will make sure we get the best chance at a good seal. Okay, so our timer is done, and what we need to do now is take the top off and turn the fire off, and we just leave our jars alone for at least 5 minutes. You can leave them longer than that. And when we have passed our 5-minute mark, then we will move them out of this pan and put them over there, and they will sit there for 24 hours and not be disturbed. So I'm going to set the timer again for another 5 minutes. So it's been 5 minutes, and our jars have had time to settle. And so now I'm going to move them off of the stove so they'll be out of the way and let them sit for 24 hours. That way we can make sure we get a good seal on all the jars and that everything that's inside the jar is as safe as I can possibly make it. So we move our jars. This is a jar lifter, and it's a really handy tool to have. You grab a hold and you lift straight up, and then you go over to where you are and let go. It's important not to slosh your jars around. If you slosh them around, you can really mess up the seal, and that's not a good thing. So you just lift them straight up, especially if you're doing this with a water bath canner where you need to go down in. You need to practice going down in and coming back out while keeping the jar perpendicular. Sideways jars, bad. And there we have it. The recipe said it made 8 cups. We had 8 cups plus a little bit left over. That will go on my toast tomorrow morning. And we have 8 jars of strawberry jam. Low sugar strawberry jam. One thing I will tell you, we always recommend that you use that product within 1 year, and it's really important to do that with the low sugar because it has a shorter shelf life than the higher sugar jam. But it will be good for that amount of time, and you probably won't have any trouble using it up because it is really good. So thank you very much for making jam with me today, and happy canning.